The first thing I noticed was the sound. Not laughter, but a particular kind of laughter. The brittle, over-practiced kind that people use when they want to seem happier than they are. It floated out from the living room before I even stepped through the door of my parents' lakefront house. Through the glass, I could see women in sequined blouses holding champagne flutes, men slapping each other's backs, my father at the center of it all, beaming like a man who'd just retired from saving the world. And me, standing outside, holding 2 diaper bags and a tray of homemade quiches because Mom said, "You always make them just right, honey." "Clara, finally. We were starting to think you'd bailed," my brother Ethan called as he opened the door. He smelled of aftershave and entitlement. His wife, Marissa, trailed behind him, already handing me her toddler. "You're a lifesaver," she said. "They're a handful tonight." I stared at the sticky-faced child now clinging to my cardigan. "Marissa, Oh, Dad's speech is starting in 10 minutes, she cut in. "Could you just keep them in the den until then?" I turned and saw the other 6, cousins, nieces, nephews, clustered around the coffee table, a sea of plastic toys and cracker crumbs. My mother's voice carried from the kitchen, bright and sharp. "Clara, sweetheart. After you settle the kids, could you grab the extra napkins from the pantry?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. This was supposed to be a celebration for Dad, but somehow it had already become a test of how much I could silently endure. I hadn't even taken my coat off. "Sure," I said, my voice barely audible over the noise. As I ushered the children toward the den, my husband Liam brushed past me. His hand light on my back, his tone effortless. "I'll go say hi to your folks, babe. You've got the kids, right?" He didn't wait for an answer. I watched him stride into the living room. Tall, confident, the kind of man who always looked like he belonged wherever he was. My mother adored him. "A real gentleman," she called him once. "You did well, Clara." I used to believe that too. The den smelled faintly of crayons and carpet cleaner. The kids tore into their toys while I sank onto the couch, balancing one on my knee, half listening to the muffled sound of my father's voice beginning his speech in the other room. Something in his tone caught me. Pride, nostalgia, the warmth of a man who'd built a life he believed was solid. It reminded me of the stories he used to tell when I was little, about loyalty and honor and keeping one's word. I used to think those were family values. When the applause erupted, I peeked out the doorway, catching sight of Liam at the bar. He was laughing, that same brittle rehearsed laughter, with Marissa's sister Hannah. She was younger than me, vibrant in a red dress that clung to her in a way that drew every eye in the room. Liam's hand rested casually on the small of her back. My stomach tightened. It wasn't jealousy, not yet. Just that quiet awareness, the one that comes before realization, when your body knows something your mind isn't ready to name. The kids shrieked behind me and I turned back, my chest constricting. I was 20 minutes late to my own father's toast, trapped here wiping apple juice off a toddler's chin. By the time I managed to sneak out, the speech was over. My father was surrounded by well-wishers, my mother beaming beside him. No one noticed me slip in. Liam was still at the bar. Hannah was still there too. They leaned in close, laughing about something I couldn't hear. Her hand brushed his arm. Quick, familiar, easy. I felt the smallest fracture inside me. Not a break yet. Just the first, almost inaudible sound of something beginning to give. Ethan appeared beside me. "You missed Dad's big moment," he said with mock reproach. "Babysitting duty again." I forced a smile. "Seems that way." He chuckled. "You've always been the reliable one. The reliable one. The convenient one. The one who never caused a scene." As he walked off, I caught my reflection in the glass. Hair slightly frizzed from the lake humidity, a faint smudge of baby food on my sleeve, eyes tired in a way that no amount of sleep could fix. And then, across the room, Liam looked up. For a brief second, our eyes met. He smiled, lifted his glass slightly as if in a silent toast. Beside him, Hannah leaned in, whispering something that made him laugh again. The crack widened. But I did what I always did. I smiled back, small and polite, and walked toward the kitchen, pretending I hadn't seen a thing. Inside, the sink was piled high with dishes, the air thick with the scent of wine and roasted beef. My mother stood by the counter, refilling platters. "Clara, darling, could you run this out to the patio?" she asked. I nodded, taking the tray, heavy, slick with condensation. My hands trembled slightly, but I told myself it was nothing. Just exhaustion. Just nerves. Through the glass doors I could see Liam again. Now outside, beneath the string lights, Hannah beside him, her laughter sharp in the cool night air. My pulse quickened, each heartbeat echoing like a warning I refused to heed. By the time I stepped onto the patio, the air had shifted. The breeze carried the faint smell of lake water and grilled meat, mingling with the perfume of guests. I placed the tray on the table, forcing my breathing to steady. Hannah's hand was on Liam's arm again. He didn't move it away. And in that moment, under the glittering lights and the illusion of family harmony, something deep inside me went still. It wasn't anger. Not yet. Just a quiet, sinking certainty. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that watches. The kind that waits. The night grew denser, the kind that wraps itself around your skin and whispers, "Stay still, don't look too closely." The party was in full swing now. Music low and tasteful, laughter spilling into the lake breeze, champagne glasses chiming like wind chimes. I lingered near the patio doors, pretending to fix the napkin arrangements while watching Liam and Hannah through the shifting crowd. They were just close enough to draw notice but not suspicion, unless someone was looking for it. And I was. She tilted her head toward him, her hair brushing his shoulder as she laughed. I could almost hear the sound, though it was swallowed by the hum of conversation. Liam said something in return. His mouth curved into that easy, practiced smile he reserved for winning people over. It was the same smile he'd given me when we first met at my father's company gala. Confident, magnetic, a little too rehearsed. Mom's voice cut through my trance. "Clara, dear, could you grab more glasses from the kitchen? We're running low." "Sure." The words slipped out automatically. I was the family's background music. Pleasant, useful, always there to fill the silence. Inside, the kitchen buzzed with a quiet chaos of catering staff and relatives offering unsolicited help. I slipped between them, opened the cabinet, and let my hands rest on the cool glass stems for a moment. I needed the stillness. "Everything okay?" a voice asked behind me. It was my cousin Julia. Older, observant, the kind of woman who notices everything but pretends not to. She raised an eyebrow when I didn't answer right away. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Her gaze followed mine through the window, where Liam stood laughing with Hannah, their silhouettes outlined by soft amber light. Julia's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Understanding, pity, maybe both. "You've always worked too hard to make everyone comfortable," she murmured, almost to herself. "It's exhausting, isn't it?" Before I could reply, she was gone, back to the living room, leaving her words behind like a mirror I didn't want to look into. When I returned outside, Dad was talking to Liam near the bar. His posture was proud, his face flushed with celebration. "I couldn't have asked for a better son-in-law," he said, clapping Liam's shoulder. "You've been good to my girl." Liam smiled, but his eyes flicked toward me only briefly. "She's the steady one," he said. "Keeps us both on track." There was a polite chuckle from nearby guests. I smiled too, even as something twisted inside me. "Keeps us both on track." That's what he said about our marriage. A maintenance role, not a partnership. My mother appeared, radiant in emerald silk, pressing another champagne flute into my hand. "You should mingle, Clara. Enjoy yourself for once." I nodded, pretending to sip. My reflection in the glass was distorted by bubbles. Smiling, blurred, foreign. "Sweetheart," Mom continued, lowering her voice, "you really should think about having kids soon. You're not getting younger, and Liam, well, he seems so great with them. Look at him over there." I turned to see him crouched beside one of the toddlers, Hannah standing beside him, laughing as she handed the child a toy. They looked effortless together, like a picture from a lifestyle magazine, curated and perfect. My chest tightened. He does love kids, I managed to say. Mom smiled approvingly, misreading everything. Then don't make him wait too long. I wanted to tell her the truth, that Liam hadn't touched me in months, that he'd been busy with late meetings, traveling for conferences that left no trace on his credit card statements. But the words stayed trapped behind my teeth, where truth went to die. When the band started playing, guests drifted toward the dance floor. My father pulled Mom into his arms, moving with surprising grace for a man who claimed his knees were shot. Ethan twirled Marissa under the lights. Even Julia had found someone to sway with. And then, of course, Liam extended his hand to Hannah. "Come on," he said, grinning. "It's just a dance." She laughed, feigning reluctance. "Only if you don't step on my toes." Their movements were fluid, natural, too practiced for two people who'd supposedly never shared this kind of rhythm. The light caught on her red dress as it clung to his side, his hand low on her waist. I watched them move together, my pulse syncing with the tempo of the song. Slow, deliberate, intimate. No one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they did and chose to look away. I set my glass down, fingers trembling. My father's voice echoed in my head from years ago. "You can't control how people act, Clara. Only how you respond." So I stayed still. When the song ended, Hannah excused herself to the restroom, brushing past me with a polite smile. Liam lingered by the bar, refilling his drink. I took a slow breath, then approached him, each step deliberate. "You didn't tell me you were such a good dancer," I said softly. He turned, startled, then recovered with a chuckle. "She made me. You know how these things are." "Do I?" His brow furrowed slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said. "Just, didn't know you two were close." He shrugged, sipping his whiskey. "She's fun. You should talk to her more. You'd like her." The irony almost made me laugh. Before I could respond, Dad called for everyone's attention. Another toast, another round of polite applause. The sound swallowed my words before they could escape. Liam turned back toward the crowd, his profile calm, composed, betraying nothing. But as I watched him, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not yet, but awareness. A small, cold place where denial could no longer breathe. The rest of the evening blurred into movement and noise. Kids running, conversations overlapping, glasses clinking. I drifted through it like a ghost, smiling when spoken to, laughing when expected. By the time the last guests began to leave, it was close to midnight. My mother kissed my cheek, her perfume sweet and suffocating. "Thank you for helping tonight, darling. You've always been so dependable." I nodded, the word dependable ringing in my ears like an accusation. Liam loaded dishes into the car while I gathered the leftover toys. Hannah stood near the driveway, saying goodbye to Ethan and Marissa. She hugged Liam a second too long, whispered something that made him grin. When we finally pulled away, the silence in the car was thick enough to choke on. He reached for the radio, filling the space with soft music. "You okay?" he asked lightly. "Just tired." He nodded. "You were amazing tonight, you know. Mom and Dad are lucky to have you." I smiled faintly. "Lucky, huh?" "Yeah." He glanced at me, expression unreadable. "Everyone depends on you, Clara. You're solid. Solid. Dependable. Reliable. The words people use when they don't see you anymore. Just your function." Outside, the reflection of the lake lights shimmered across the windshield, scattering into fragments. That's how I felt, scattered. Something had shifted tonight, though I couldn't name it yet. I only knew that a truth was moving closer, quiet but relentless, like a current beneath still water. And deep down, I already knew it would destroy more than just my marriage. It would destroy the illusion of family itself. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, too bright for how heavy I felt. Liam was already up, moving around the kitchen when I came downstairs. The smell of coffee filled the air, rich and familiar, masking something colder underneath, the silence between us. He looked up from his mug, smiling easily. "Morning, sleepyhead. Big night, huh?" "Yeah," I said, reaching for the second cup he'd poured. My voice felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. "You were up early." He shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. Head still buzzing from all the noise last night." There was a small smear of lipstick on the edge of his shirt collar. Faint, almost invisible, a whisper of red against white. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I stared at it too long. He noticed. "What?" "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess." He nodded, unconcerned, turning back to his phone. I watched him scroll, his thumb moving fast, unreadable. After breakfast, he announced he had errands to run. Bank, car wash, maybe stop by the gym. He kissed my cheek before leaving, the gesture automatic, practiced. His lips were warm, but it felt like contact without meaning. When the door shut behind him, the house fell quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I stood there for a long moment, coffee cooling in my hands, trying to understand why my heart was beating so fast. I walked upstairs to the bedroom. His suit jacket hung over the chair. The faint red mark from earlier still clung to the fabric, a whisper of evidence that could still be explained away. Maybe it was Hannah's, maybe not. Maybe it was nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. I reached for the phone he'd left on the nightstand, hesitating before picking it up. I'd never gone through his things. I used to think trust meant respecting privacy. But lately, trust felt like a story I kept rewriting to keep the ending kind. The phone lit up before I could touch it. A message flashed across the screen. "Hannah. Still thinking about last night, winking face." My body went cold. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The message disappeared as the screen dimmed again, leaving only my reflection staring back. For a moment, the world narrowed to that single point of light, the curve of her name, the tiny winking emoji, the ache spreading in my chest like a bruise. I set the phone back down gently, as if any sudden movement might make the truth louder. It was there. I'd seen it. But I couldn't face it yet. Instead, I did what I'd always done. I cleaned. I wiped the counters, loaded the dishwasher, folded the laundry. Each small movement gave me something solid to hold while everything else slipped out of place. By the time Liam came home, I'd rehearsed my composure like a monologue. He dropped his keys in the bowl and smiled. "House looks great. You've been busy." "Yeah. Dad called," he said casually, pouring himself a drink. "He wanted to know if we're free next weekend. They're having everyone over again. Family brunch or something." I nodded, though the thought made my stomach knot. "Sure." He glanced at me over the rim of his glass. "You okay?" "Of course." But that night, as he fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, listening to his even breathing. The air felt thick with unspoken words. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the message again and again in my head, like a song I couldn't turn off. The next few days blurred together. Work, yours, silence. Every time he smiled at his phone, every time he turned it face down on the table, the unease grew sharper. By Wednesday, it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was certainty, coiled tight beneath my ribs. That evening, while Liam was in the shower, I checked his jacket pocket. There was a folded receipt from a restaurant downtown, a place we'd been to once, years ago, for our anniversary. 2 entrees. 1 bottle of wine. Date Monday night. He'd told me he was at the gym. The ache inside me turned to something colder, steadier. I didn't confront him that night. Or the next. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. I needed to see how far it went. How many layers of truth had been quietly replaced by lies. When the weekend came and we drove back to my parents' house for the brunch, I felt like I was walking into a play I already knew the ending to. The lake shimmered under a pale sky. The house was alive with laughter again. Hannah was there. Course she was. She greeted me warmly, her voice smooth as honey. "Clara, you look lovely. That color suits you." Her dress was a pale cream today. Soft, innocent, deliberate. She leaned in for a hug, and I caught a faint whiff of Liam's cologne on her skin. For a heartbeat I thought I might be sick. "Thanks," I said quietly. Across the patio, Liam was talking to my brother again, laughing easily. He looked relaxed, happy, lighter than he'd been in months. I wondered if guilt ever weighed on him at all. As the day went on, I noticed the glances, their small, almost imperceptible looks across the room. The brush of hands when passing plates. The shared jokes no one else seemed to understand. They weren't reckless. They didn't need to be. People like Liam and Hannah didn't get caught by mistake. They got caught when they wanted to be. Later that afternoon, while the others took the kids down to the lake, I stayed behind to help Mom clean up. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft clatter of dishes. "You and Liam seem distant lately," she said suddenly, her tone light but probing. "Everything all right?" Froze. "Why do you ask?" I shrugged. "Just mother's intuition. He seemed distracted last night. Maybe he's under stress." I nodded, careful not to let my voice break. "Maybe." But then she sighed, lowering her voice. "He and Hannah seem to get along well though. It's nice seeing someone bring out his playful side." My stomach lurched. "Playful side?" She smiled. "Don't overthink it, dear. You're lucky to have such a charming husband." I looked down at the sink, the soap bubbles rising and bursting, fragile and temporary. When I stepped outside again, Liam and Hannah were standing near the water, laughing at something only they shared. The sunlight caught on the gold in his hair, the gleam in her eyes. I realized then that betrayal doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in fragments. Small choices, lingering looks, tiny silences that become whole conversations. And I had been silent for far too long. That night back at home I finally let myself cry. Not the loud, dramatic kind of crying that begs for comfort, but the quiet kind that feels like leaking instead of breaking. Each tear was a confession I'd never spoken. I knew. I'd known for a while. And now I couldn't unknow it. As I lay there, staring into the dark, one thought anchored itself in my mind. If they were willing to betray me so easily, what else had my family helped him hide? By the time my father's second celebration rolled around, a smaller dinner this time, just family, the air in the house carried the heavy, restless stillness that always preceded storms. The lake outside was glass smooth, reflecting a sky that looked too calm to be trusted. Liam insisted we arrive early. He said it with his usual charm, as if punctuality might fix what had already begun to rot. I nodded and said nothing. I'd learned that silence gave him space to reveal himself. The table was already set when we arrived. White linen, gold-rimmed plates, candles flickering softly. My mother hovered near the stove, humming, pretending everything in her world was perfect. My father poured wine. Hannah arrived last. Her entrance was timed like an actress stepping into her cue. She kissed both my parents on the cheek, laughed when my father complimented her dress, and greeted me with that same sweet, practiced tone. "You're glowing tonight, Clara." "Am I?" "Absolutely." Her gaze flicked toward Liam. "Marriage suits you." The way she said it, light, careless, sliced cleaner than anything direct ever could. Dinner began in a blur of polite conversation. The sound of cutlery against china filled the spaces where honesty should have lived. My father talked about retirement plans, Ethan about new investments, my mother about renovations. Everyone performed normalcy so well it almost fooled me too. Almost. Halfway through the meal, my father raised his glass for another toast. I smiled when expected, laughed at the right moments. But underneath, my thoughts pulsed with a rhythm of their own. Measured, deliberate, cold. I'd found what I needed earlier that day. While Liam showered, I'd gone through the drawer where he kept his watch and cufflinks. Beneath the small box, I'd found a folded piece of paper, a hotel booking receipt. 2 nights, last week. The same dates he'd told me he was in Boston for a work conference. The name on the reservation, Liam Barrett plus guest. Yes. I didn't need to see her name to know. Even now, sitting across from them, their laughter soft and civilized, The knowledge pulsed inside me like a secret heartbeat. When dessert was served, I excused myself to the kitchen. I stood by the window, gripping the counter, watching the candlelight flicker against the glass. My reflection looked unfamiliar. Paler, sharper. The back door creaked, turned. Hannah stepped in, carrying an empty wine bottle. She smiled faintly. "Need a hand?" I shook my head. "I've got it." She placed the bottle down, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Liam's favorite, the one he'd bought me last year for my birthday. "You and Liam seem happy," she said casually, her tone almost innocent. I met her gaze. "Do we?" She tilted her head, as if examining me. "He talks about you, you know. Says you're the calm one. The anchor." "The anchor," I repeated softly. "That's one way to describe being overlooked." Her smile faltered for a heartbeat, but she recovered quickly. "You're lucky. Most people would kill for stability." I studied her face, the faint blush on her cheeks, the way her hands fidgeted with her bracelet. "And you?" asked. "Would you?" Her eyes flicked up, startled for just a moment before the mask slid back into place. "I don't know what you mean." I stepped closer, close enough to see the shimmer of uncertainty behind her composure. "I think you do." The silence stretched thin between us, taut with the weight of things neither of us would name. Then, from the dining room, Liam called out, "Everything okay in there?" Hannah smiled, turning toward the sound. "Perfect," she said brightly, and slipped out of the kitchen like smoke. I stood there a moment longer, pulse pounding. It wasn't rage that filled me, it was clarity. Cold, steady clarity. Later, after the dishes were cleared and goodbyes exchanged, my parents and Ethan went to the porch to watch the lake shimmer in the moonlight. Liam lingered inside, talking to Dad about finances. Hannah gathered her things near the door, her laughter low and private. I excused myself quietly, went to the guest room, and retrieved the small envelope from my purse, the hotel receipt. I'd printed it that morning, folding it once, clean and deliberate. When I came back into the living room, they were standing closer than they should have been. Her hand brushed his wrist as she reached for her coat. The motion was small, almost invisible, but my father's reflection in the window caught it. He turned, noticing me. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" "Yes," I said. Then I placed the envelope on the table between Liam and Hannah. "What's this?" Liam asked, his smile uncertain now. "Something I found while cleaning." Hannah's eyes flicked to his, quick and sharp. His expression barely shifted, but his fingers tightened around the envelope. "Clara," he said quietly, "we shouldn't do this here." "Oh, I think here is perfect," I replied, my voice calm. "Come. Since this is where the lying started, isn't it?" My mother turned from the porch, alarmed. "What's going on?" Liam exhaled slowly, every trace of charm draining from his face. "It's not what you think." "Then open it," I said. He didn't move. My father stepped closer, confusion deepening into something heavier. "Son." Liam swallowed, then tore the envelope open. The receipt slid out. 2 nights, Boston Marriott, 1 shared suite. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother gasped. Ethan cursed under his breath. Hannah's face went pale, her voice small. "Clara, please." I held up a hand. "Don't." He stopped. Liam ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting between me and the others. "It was a mistake," he said finally. "It didn't mean anything." The words hit harder than the proof ever could. "Didn't mean anything." A soft laugh escaped me, sharp, disbelieving. "That's convenient. Tell me, Liam, how many times has nothing happened?" He flinched. "Clara, please." I turned toward my father, who looked stricken, betrayed not just by Liam but by the collapse of everything he'd believed about our marriage. My mother's hand clutched her chest, eyes glistening. And suddenly I didn't want pity. I didn't want anyone's shock. I just wanted truth. "I'll send for my things tomorrow," I said quietly, stepping back. "You can both figure out how to explain it from here." "Clara," Hannah began, her voice trembling. I looked at her, really looked. The perfect red lips, the steady breath she tried to maintain, the fear behind her eyes. "You should go," I said simply. And she did. The door shut softly behind her. Liam stood frozen, the receipt trembling slightly in his hand. For a long moment no one spoke. Then my father said, voice low and even, "You need to leave." Liam hesitated, looked at me one last time, but there was nothing left to find. He left without another word. When the sound of his car faded down the road, my mother reached for me. "Oh, Clara." But I pulled away. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about him or her. It was about all of them. Every moment my family had looked away, every time they'd told me to be grateful, dependable, calm. And I'd been all those things. Until tonight. Now I was something else entirely. Something awake. The house felt wrong the next morning. Too clean, too still. Someone, probably my mother, had tidied away the traces of last night. The empty wine glasses, the dropped napkin, the envelope that had once held my marriage inside it. But the air still carried something sour and final. I woke early, long before the others. For a while, I just sat on the edge of my childhood bed, staring at the pale morning light spreading across the wall. It painted everything in a quiet honesty that the night had lacked. I thought I might cry, but there was nothing left to wring out. My tears had hardened into something colder, something that hummed like a nerve exposed. When I went downstairs, my father was already in the kitchen, nursing black coffee. His posture, rigid, precise, reminded me of when I was a child and had disappointed him, though this time it wasn't me who'd done the disappointing. He looked up when I entered. "You didn't sleep," he said. "Neither did you." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the chair opposite him. Sat. The silence between us was the kind that doesn't need filling. After a long moment he said, "I'm sorry you had to go through that here." I stared into my mug. Better here than somewhere I couldn't leave. He took that in quietly. Then he said something I didn't expect. "When your mother and I were first married, she caught me having dinner with someone I shouldn't have. It wasn't physical, but it was wrong. I told myself it was nothing. That kind of thinking runs in families, I suppose." I looked up, startled. "You're saying, Liam?" "I'm saying," he interrupted gently, "we teach people how to love us by what we tolerate. And we teach our children what love should look like." The words landed heavier than I wanted them to. I thought about my mother, her endless patience, her soft-spoken endurance. How she'd swallowed every sharp edge for the sake of appearances. Maybe I'd learned my calm from her. Maybe I'd learned my silence too. He sighed and reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "You don't have to be like us." The kitchen clock ticked softly. I felt something shift inside me, a quiet, aching acceptance. By the time my mother came downstairs, eyes puffy but smile fixed, I'd already packed my things. She fussed over breakfast, avoiding the subject as though pretending hard enough could rewrite it. When I hugged her goodbye, she whispered, "He'll come to his senses. They always do." I pulled back, met her eyes and said gently, "I hope not." She didn't understand, and maybe that was the point. Outside, the lake gleamed under the late morning sun. I loaded my suitcase into the car and paused for one last look at the house. It had always been a place of quiet expectations, love traded for obedience, peace bought with silence. But I wasn't quiet anymore. As I pulled onto the long drive, I passed Hannah's car parked by the gate. She stepped out, tentative, her hair pulled back, her face pale and swollen from crying. I slowed instinctively. She raised a hand, motioning for me to roll down the window. "Clara," she began, her voice hoarse. "Please, just a minute." I hesitated, then did. The glass slid down with a soft hum. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, words tumbling fast. "It started as, God, I don't even know. I was angry at Ethan, I was lonely, and Liam was just convenient," I finished. She flinched. "No, that's not." He listened to me. I let out a small, humorless laugh. "He's good at that. Listening like he's building a case for your heart." Her eyes filled again. I never wanted to hurt you. I studied her face, the woman who had been my friend, my sister-in-law, my family. You know, I said quietly, you remind me a lot of me. She blinked. What do you mean? I spent years thinking that keeping everyone happy was the same as being kind, that letting things slide made me strong. But it just made me disappear. She looked at me like she didn't know whether to apologize or cry harder. I'm not angry anymore, I said softly. But I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Her lip trembled. I understand. No, I said, starting the engine. You don't. But one day you will. I drove off before she could answer. The road out of town curved past the ridge where the lake widened, where the water shimmered like glass. For a fleeting moment, I saw my reflection in the rearview mirror. Hair tangled, eyes hollow, but there was something fierce in it too. Something alive. For the first time in years, I wasn't the calm one. I wasn't the anchor, or the caretaker, or the observer. I was the storm that followed. That night, in my small apartment hours away from home, I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and let the silence breathe. The city below was alive. Messy, imperfect, indifferent. It didn't expect anything from me. Open my phone. There were 5 missed calls from Liam, 3 from my mother, 1 from Ethan. None from Hannah. I deleted them all. Then, for the first time, I let myself cry. Not for him, not for them, but for the woman I'd been. The one who'd folded herself into every quiet space, who'd mistaken patience for strength and silence for peace. When the tears stopped, I felt lighter. Not healed, just emptied in a way that made room for something new. I closed my eyes, and somewhere in the quiet between one breath and the next, I heard my father's voice again. You don't have to be like us. And I decided I wouldn't be. Tomorrow I would start over. But tonight I would sit here and let the world move without me. Finally, beautifully, on my own terms.